Hey, Drew, what
Yo,
was the best news in all of sports over the last, I don't know, 7 years?
the last 7 years. I thought you were going to say this week because I was going to say Aaron Rodgers retiring as a Falcons fan, but over the
Which I don't know if
last,
that's true anymore. I haven't now. I don't. I have seen like maybe he didn't. I don't know. I'm confused.
oh, interesting. But what was the best news of the past 7 years?
NCAA football's coming back for PlayStation and Xbox.
You know, Early, sometimes them football boosters will provide your family with a car or even house if you keep nice and quiet about it. They gonna do what now?
Welcome to the place where if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying is a way of life.
Just keep it down home, cuz.
Where degenerate gamblers can congregate in peace.
Money, yeah. Money, yeah.
Where screaming at 20-year-old kids on TV is just another Saturday.
Every fiber in your bone, and you take it and you beat the piss out of them. I'm talking about beat the piss out of them. Let's go whip their ass. Let's go.
Where game days don't end until the Rainbow Warriors say so.
It hits the upright. Oh my God! It hits the left upright. It hits the left upright.
They are the bagmen that Danny Sheridan never found.
I lived to him with a strong-ass offer.
And it all comes to you with a splash of bourbon on the side. Woo! This is the Friends of the Program podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Friends of the Program podcast. I'm Brad. He's Drew. As we roll you through another week of Auburn sports, so glad to have you along. We'll get deep here in a minute on the holy sports. You guys, you're probably thinking it's football season. No. It's Auburn baseball season, baby.
Yeah.
We're
represent.
We got the reps going. Jerseys are out. Tickets are bought. Auburn baseball season is coming. And we are going to go deep into it with our friends from Plainsman parking lots and get a full-on preview of the baseball season. I'm just kind of going to sit back and listen and watch and talk, and because Drew and him are going to go deep. They know the ins and outs of the program more than I think just about anybody out there, maybe besides Coach Butch Thompson and those guys.
Yeah, I'll default to him. I will default to Butch. Butch and maybe Tim Hudson. I'll give it to them.
Before we go any further, don't forget you can always follow us on Twitter at FOT Podcast. Same on Instagram at FOT Podcast. Find us on your favorite listening device, whether that's Spotify or iTunes, whatever, by searching Friends of the Program. And do the same for YouTube. Just like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Drew, how you doing this week, man?
So far, so good. Very, very busy week as I've been preparing for baseball. Basketball had a game that we'll kind of talk about real quick because there was an event at the arena. That's what I'm going to call that. And then it was signing day. It was the high holy day for me and my father for years and years and years. And now it's just kind of you can add people.
Yeah, it's weird with recruitment not really being recruitment anymore.
Yeah, no.
And not watching puppies get pulled out on ESPN for commitments. And it's just odd. Yeah. Just so everybody's aware, normally we record, Saturday night, Sunday, somewhere in that range. We're actually recording on Thursday night, the previous week right now. Yours truly has to travel for work. So, I think it gets in the way. It's going to be negative 16 degrees when I land where I'm going on Sunday.
That's what you get for working.
Yeah. The high all week next week. The highest temperature it gets is 11 degrees. It's going to be disgustingly cold.
That's why we look up south.
That's why I'm going to be inside the entire time. Go to the car, get inside, that's it. So we're going to record early, but it's cool because we're doing a baseball preview. We don't have that second basketball game to talk to you about this coming weekend just yet. We'll recap down the road. But what we will do first and foremost is talk about Auburn football recruiting, because that wrapped up yesterday, partially wrapped up. There's still a few open spots out there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Coach Harsin has even said we're not done when it comes to recruiting. There's still maybe a few spots to fill the high school ranks, because remember, signing day is just day one. It's actually not the full-on end of when players have to sign by.
Yeah, no, it actually goes until August 1st.
Yeah, so there's still plenty of time. Plus, Auburn sounds like they're going to hit the portal pretty hard. I think we still got 6 or 7 spots open this year with scholarships available. So a lot of room for Auburn to make moves and see what shakes out in the transfer portal. And I'd like to kick it over to you, Drew, get your thoughts on signing day, because 6 guys signed with Auburn yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
To me, the biggest thing that jumps out is for the first time since 2017, Auburn signed a high school offensive tackle. And he's a monster.
Yeah. No, he, as Coach Harsin, I believe, put it, he is a large man. He is a large human being. But no, I was actually expecting him to open with Colby Smith, who is the offensive tackle out of North Carolina that Auburn stole from Tennessee, I guess you could say. Will Friend was his main recruiter at Tennessee. And so he was, when Will Friend became the offensive line coach at Auburn, when Mike Bobo was hired, that was kind of a foregone conclusion. So, but that was literally, there could not be a more glaring need for the Auburn football team than offensive tackle, the offensive line, for that matter. I expect Auburn to add 2, maybe 3. They've got 17 signees right now. Everybody projects Auburn to have 25 coming into this new class. So you're talking about 8 spots. I believe that by the time this airs, Auburn will have added another one, because I think Auburn gets a running back out of Mississippi tomorrow, by the last name of Hunter, because he's announcing tomorrow as a part of a big school signing event that they do on the Friday. And that's totally fine. But no, Colby Smith is the diamond of this particular signing day. Lee Hunter, back in December, had to be the biggest name, the person that I'm looking forward to the most in seeing coming up in the spring, because he's already on campus. Mm-hmm. But I'm excited to see Colby Smith. I'm also excited to see what the buzz is around this Caden Bridges. We heard Nick, our guest last week in the last episode at AU Sports Nerd, talk about Caden Bridges, who had just kind of caught fire in the recruiting ranks. The South Alabama commitment was getting interest from Auburn, definitely, and Mississippi State, among others, just kind of checking around, see what was going on. So I'm excited to see him as well.
That was the thing I noticed yesterday, was the guys that we did sign. You know, and it was all 3 stars. You know, there I think 1 4-star player may have signed yesterday.
Yeah.
But the guys that we did sign, and it's scary when you think Bama signed their best class, literally the best class that's ever been recorded as far as recruiting tracking has ever gone. And
that's the true state. They
were the number 1 recruiting team in the states of Texas, Alabama, and Florida, which is just frightening. Mm-hmm. But I was surprised to see how many guys at that 3-star level that we beat other SEC teams for, which, you know, they're Mississippi State, Kentucky, South Carolina. We're not out there beating LSU and Bama and Georgia for these guys. But at least tells me these guys are the caliber of player that we're not out here recruiting 3 stars and trying to beat Southern Miss, or maybe that under the radar 3-star that goes to the Sun Belt or the MAC or some low level Big Ten team. We're at least play our recruiting SEC caliber players to come in and play. Obviously, talent. There's going to be a talent gap for a year or 2 here. The biggest thing in Auburn's favor, quite frankly, is the fact that no one lost eligibility last year. Mm-hmm. And you and I said it when it happened, when Gus got fired. The biggest recruiting job Coach Harsin had was recruiting the team that was here now. Because if you can gap this year with the right players, you know, we had some attrition, but with the right players that we have on staff and develop them, and most of these guys were a lot of 4-stars on this roster, still a talented roster. Then you could start recruiting for need moving forward. And the thing that I saw even today, first full day after signing day, was Coach Harsin and everybody on staff tweeting out about the 22 cycle. Like, all right, guys, it's 22's time to shine. I don't ever remember that in a coordinated effort from a previous administration, coaching staff, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
No, you're not, and you're not wrong. And you're going to see more of that. It was more of a digital presence for the coaching staffs in previous years for Auburn. I think Gus was able to tap into the digital market a little bit more so than his predecessors. But you're going to see that a lot more with an administration like Brian Harsin, who I've heard interview after interview where he drives home. Recruiting is a year-round job now.
Yeah.
Well, coach, it has been. No. But I get what normal Auburn fans that follow recruiting say. Well, it has been. Why is this a big deal? Because remember, we're just 2 coaches removed from. I'm going to go hunting, duck hunting, right after the Alabama game, when prime recruiting stretch.
Yeah.
We're just 1 coach away from just kind of rolling out, and we won a national title. And as we all kind of know, ever since 2017, recruiting just hasn't seemed like the biggest push. There hasn't been any backup plan for Georgia and Alabama.
The biggest problem is there's been no backup plans. It's not like we haven't shot for the moon. It's just that GME stock has not gone to the moon, we haven't had that backup or willing to sell at the right price, and we're just going to hell with it.
Exactly. No, it was more like, well, now that the 2 or 3 offensive line recruits that we like are off the board, I guess we're not getting one this year. And you just can't do that in this league and expect to contend for championships, rivalry games, and everything like that.
The last time Auburn had a class rated 30th or lower was 2004. It was on the heels of that 2003 7-5 season where Tuberville survived Jetgate, right? Because remember, everything. The 2004 class. Well, remember 2004 was the football season. Was 7 months later after the signing day,
and that turned into 2008.
Yeah, exactly. But that 2004 class largely made up that 2000, 2007, 2008 team, right?
Correct.
That was pretty decent team in 07. You were led by a freshman offensive line. 4 out of 5 guys on that line were all freshmen. Went down to Florida, beat Tebow and those guys. 08 dumpster fire, but that I think has more to do with coaching than actual players on the field.
From everything that I know, that was more just a Nick Saban's here. Oh well.
Yeah, it was that, plus you're bringing in an offensive coordinator who doesn't mesh with the rest of the staff, and you didn't let him choose his own staff to implement a radically different offense. It just nothing made sense.
Absolutely.
And nothing quite pissed me off as much as driving to West Virginia and losing on a Thursday night. Especially when in the first half we had been running the ball via I formation down their throat, up 17-3, and then just pissed away the game. Freaking great.
That happened.
Stupid air West Virginia. Anyway,
but overall, I think that this class was treated more as a best available fit.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That's a lot of what I heard from Brian Harsin.
I was impressed with what he did.
But and thank you for reminding me of the other thing that I was going to say before we jump over to Kevin. Is that this is a weird year because Auburn, none of these recruits came on campus. Auburn's biggest seller is Auburn.
Yeah.
Once you get on campus at Auburn, you fall in love. We can all talk about it. And part of the reason why Auburn is as good a program as it is because of that on-campus visit. A coach is a coach is a coach, unless you're a relationships guy, which there are those guys out there. But once you get on campus at Auburn, you fall in love. And that's where Auburn's biggest recruiting tool is, and COVID took that away from Auburn this year.
The other thing COVID took away too, and I saw recruiting experts say this, is there's going to be a lot of FCS and D2 teams who get better recruits than they're ever used to getting because that evaluation on campus process via camps and things like that went totally away this year. Nobody going to games, no diamonds in the rough that were found while you're out. Remember, we found Cam Newton not by scouting Cam Newton. We were scouting someone else on that team.
Correct.
At Blinn College, and then Cam was just there. So that kind of evaluation periods are gone. So you're going to have guys fall through the cracks. So the hope is that maybe we picked up a few, and we'll see how that goes in a few years.
Yep.
That'll end the recruiting talk for now, folks. We're going to go deep onto Auburn baseball. Season starts this coming week. It is time. Actually, wait, is the 20th the start date or the 22nd?
It's next Friday. So
wait. I got my dates wrong because I'm trying to figure out exactly.
Yeah, that you're talking about when you get to go see Auburn baseball.
No. The night is it the 12th or the 19th? That's first baseball day.
First baseball day is Friday, February 12th.
All right, so it's this coming Friday as the podcast actually drops.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I was trying to get in my head. So this coming Friday, the 12th, Auburn baseball starts. We're going to go deep with the Plainsman parking lot via at AUPPL. Stick around, be right back. We'll talk all about the Tigers and if they can get back to Omaha just like they did a couple of years ago. Well, welcome back in as we get to our special guest this week. We are speaking with Kevin Ives, also known as at AUPPL on Twitter, the Plainsman Parking Lot. Kevin, welcome into the Friends of the Program podcast. Glad to have you and excited to talk some baseball.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
So want to get started here with you and Drew and kind of steamroll or start the conversation. And I might step out of the way a decent amount, ask some questions from a different perspective here in a few. But when you think Butch Thompson, you think pitching. That is his bread and butter. That's his calling card. Looks like the Bull, Cody Greenhill, is going to move into the rotation this year on the weekends. How does that starting rotation and pitching staff really shape up? And is it going to continue to be the strength of this baseball team?
I definitely think it's going to be one of the strengths. Actually, one of the bigger surprises has been how Richard Fitz has done in the offseason and in preparation. He's a guy that's gone from basically as a walk-on, and now he's going to be not only a Friday night starter, but he's supposed to be a high draft pick. He's turned a lot of heads with his velocity and with his control and work ethic and stuff. So we're potentially setting up for a weekend rotation of Fitz on Friday, Cody on Saturday, and then Jack Owen on Sunday. So, I mean, that's probably the deepest we've had a starting three on the weekend for a long time. Normally in Auburn, like the problem has been you'd have a guy like Casey, and then you'd have a number two guy, and then it was just hit or miss on Sunday for that third guy. But if we can keep all three of those guys healthy for the entire year, and that's not to mention the guys that could spot start, like Garrett Wade or Ryan Watson or stuff like guys like that, Auburn probably has the deepest, if not starting rotation, the deepest sort of long relief they've had in a long time.
There's absolutely no question about it. And you didn't even mention the guy, I guess we can still call him a newcomer, that I'm really excited to see in Hayden Mullins as well, who's probably going to be a Tuesday, Wednesday midway starter. What's the kind of ceiling that we're looking at? Because the way that I see it, Kevin, is Mullins is probably one of your weekend starters next year as well.
Yeah, I definitely see that happening. And I think it's going to be – I think that's why these midweeks, if they happen, are really, really crucial for Auburn, because we really want to try to get that depth as much as we can. We really want guys to have the experience that they need going in the weekend. You don't want a guy who's making his first start on an SEC weekend. You want guys that have had time to kind of stretch their arms out a bit and that are ready to go when we hit sort of late March and hit the SEC. So, I mean, it really is because of everything that happened last season with COVID and guys coming back for basically a bonus year. We actually kind of had one of the deepest, we really had kind of a wealth of riches this year on the pitching staff. And so you got a lot of tools to play with. I know Butch just talked about that. He's just got a lot of tools in the chest for him to kind of use at his disposal. And so you may see him do a little bit more as the season progresses, kind of do a little bit more matchup stuff, probably more so than he's had the ability to do in the past.
I think you're absolutely right. As far as the starting pitching staff, the way that I kind of break it down and the way that I'm going to have it in my article that I believe is going to be posted tomorrow on College of Magnolia, is I've got the weekend starters and then I've got my Tuesday and Wednesday starters. We've already been talking for about 5 or 6 minutes just about the starting pitching, and we haven't even mentioned probably the most seasoned starting pitcher on those Tuesday games in Brooks Fuller, who has seen weekend action. I can remember him 2 years ago playing at Texas A&M and having a great outing. What are your thoughts on him as well as Trace Bright?
I really like Brooks Fuller. I think this is the year that Brooks kind of takes that next step. I think that he has had a lot of opportunity. He's had a lot of chances to kind of develop and really give himself room to grow. He hasn't been rushed in anything. I mean, he's had a lot of starts where he's had to kind of figure things out on the fly when we've been kind of stretched for arms. But I really think this is the year for Brooks. And I think Brooks is the guy that kind of comes into that role that if one of those three on the weekends goes down or has to miss any time, whether it's COVID or an injury, that Brooks is going to be the guy, hopefully, that kind of steps in. I mean, he's going to have a little bit more experience with his dad. His dad is is a pretty good coach in his own right. His dad has more time to kind of focus. I think he sold his business in town, and so he's in more of the travel ball circuit. And so he's got a lot more education, and he's got a lot more people that can help analyze stuff for him. So, I mean, that's going to be one of the best things that I noticed during those first games, or those pre-conference games, is seeing when guys come in, how they're used and how effective they are to begin with. And so you'll probably see guys like Brooks, like when he's used, he may come in for, while other guys are getting their arms kind of stretched out, you may see him on the weekend for 1 or 2 innings just to kind of get his arm stretched out as well, and kind of get him and other guys kind of acclimated. And so it'll be interesting to see like what they have, what their velocity is, what type of control they have, especially in cold weather, what type of control that they're going to have. And so that's always one of the bigger things to kind of watch as they lead up to SEC play.
Kevin, do you see a scenario where Cody Greenhill may not be the Friday night guy, and that could actually flip to a Jack Owen who has more of starting experience? I know Cody has that mental fortitude being a closer for all these years, but hasn't really started that many games or gone too deep into games that often for Auburn. He's given a few extra innings when needed. Jack Owen, he has that experience on the weekends, taking the ball as a starter. Plus, you get that lefty on Friday nights. Is that something that Butch may consider?
I think the best bet for Cody, for not only for his future, for the team, is to keep him on Saturday. I'm always on the mindset that if everything goes wrong on Saturday, you still can have a guy to hold for Sunday like Jack. And so even as much as you eat into your bullpen on Saturday, if there was a bad outing on Saturday or Friday, having some guy that is kind of reliable on the back end kind of saves you a little bit, because you're not kind of, it's not affecting you for 2 games, if that makes sense. Because that'll sometimes happen on a Saturday. Like Friday, you'll have a great start from somebody. We've had Casey have great starts on Friday, and then Saturday, for some other reason, it kind of goes pear-shaped. And so you're still recovering during that Saturday game, and then also on that Sunday game, trying to figure out what you're going to do with guys. I think with Cody, the best thing is to keep him on Saturday if need be. I really hope, last year they did a bit where they tried to kind of bookend him with Tanner a bit. And so that, Tanner would come in and then Cody would come in and close. But you kind of saw early in the season last year, I mean, it was all an early season last year, but you kind of saw that wasn't that effective, because if you try to bring him back in, when you try to bring Cody back in on a Sunday, if need be, it wasn't as good as he could be. He wasn't as sharp. I think if you kind of you keep him on Saturday, and you try to see, he's a senior. This is his role. He's going to be fired up. It's going to be, Saturdays are the pivot games. You're either winning a series or you're going to try to salvage a series. You're winning the series, you're trying to tie it up. I mean, he's a senior. Has the experience. I think that's a role that's going to kind of fit his mentality a bit better. So I can see us having Fitz on Friday, keeping Cody on Saturday, and then holding Jack on Sunday. And if things, really are kind of going out of whack, maybe you kind of move Jack in. But, I would rather keep him on Sunday, because at that point, if you lost the first 2 games, just thinking on a serious standpoint, if you lost the first 2 games, you've got a really reliable senior experienced guy to try to prevent you from getting swept or to finish the sweep.
Yeah. So everything, so not to cut you off, but everything that you've heard suggests that Richard Fitz has made that much of a move forward to become that Friday night guy for Auburn.
Yeah, I think he has. I mean, he's that next in line. He's being kind of touted as, the next, Keegan, Casey, Tanner, and then now it's Richard Fitz. He's kind of like, and you see the scouting reports on him have kind of shown that as well. Now there may be a situation if Auburn has one of those, I think that I don't know how many of them are going to be. I know at least the Arkansas series is a Thursday, Friday, Saturday game. There may be some scenario where you kind of keep him on a Friday technically, but it's the second game of the series. But I think they're really confident with what he can bring to start off with and kind of set the tone. And you think about with Jack, keeping him on a Sunday. I mean, you've been facing two pitchers in Cody and Richard that are pitching, Cody and Fitz that are pitching one way, kind of different styles in them, and then bringing Jack in on Sunday, you're completely throwing off hitters because they're it's not something they're used to. They've got into a rhythm in the first two games, and now you're kind of throwing a huge wild card at them with Jack's delivery and kind of how his curve especially can really, I think, be very beneficial to Auburn, keeping him in that final role. But yeah, Richard Fitz is, I mean, you see all the scouting reports from D1 Baseball, from Baseball America, like they're touting him as the real deal. And there's nothing right now that kind of leads you to think that is false.
So that kind of begs the question, and Drew, I don't mean to monopolize.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
It begs the question, who takes over that Cody Greenhill spot out of the bullpen moving forward?
That may be one thing to kind of see. I don't think we'll have a true closer. We've got we have a guy in Mason Barnett that has kind of been being worked in that role. And he's a high strikeout guy. He's not a guy that's only going to give you one inning or three batters and that's it. Like he can get extended saves if he needs to, but right now it's going to be Mason Barnett. I think he is the kind of the guy, but it also could be a situation. You may see a guy like Peyton Glavin step into that role as a closer, or I mean, you may see Brooks. I think it's going to really be, Butch has never been a guy, and you don't really see this a lot in college baseball, where you have a true closer. You basically kind of let the game determine who you're going to pitch, because you're thinking through those, as crucial as those series are, what you're going to do. If you have a game that's really tight and you really need to get off on the right foot, then you're probably going to throw Mason Barnett. But if you have maybe a 2-run lead, 3-run lead, and you kind of have the luxury where you can play around a little bit, you may see like a younger guy kind of come in and try to get that experience in those pressure situations and getting those outs, instead of always being like, this is, if it's a save situation, it's always going to be this guy. I think with the depth that Auburn has with their bullpen, they can play around a lot more. And that's going to be kind of Tim Hudson's job a little bit. He's taking that role that Steve Smith had, where Tim Hudson's got to kind of know his guys and kind of get that feel and not really assign roles in that way. Kind of know, depending on what batters are coming up, or kind of going to know what the situation is, what pitcher that he's going to use.
Kevin, one of the guys, again, Kevin Ives, joins us here on Friends of the Program podcast. You can follow him if you're an Auburn sports fan and he's not on your follow list on Twitter. I don't know what you're doing. It's at AUBPL. I normally take over for the College of Magnolia Twitter, and I just default to him because he does a fantastic job of giving you the play-by-play what's happening, because he's always dialed in. But Kevin, one of the guys that I am looking forward to seeing since we've moved to the bullpen, which is exactly where I wanted to go next, is a newcomer, a guy that's still learning the language, basically. Joseph Gonzalez, who was a 2019 Under Armour All-American out of Puerto Rico. The guy has some really amazing stuff for a kid his age. A slider that sits in the low 90s, and a slurve that can hit somewhere in the high 70s, low 80s. What have you been able to even catch a glimpse of this guy yet?
I've not been able to see him. I mean, I'd heard of him. He does kind of stick out when you kind of look at the Auburn baseball roster. You have a guy from Puerto Rico that's coming in, and especially as highly ranked as he is, and as pre-scouted as he has been. But I've not seen him pitch in person. I don't think many people have at Auburn, and so I think I would like to see him. It's kind of weird sometimes with the freshmen, like the true freshman pitchers, and how the kind of the red shirt rule works.
Mm-hmm.
If you see him, you'll probably see him a little bit in those first couple weeks, and then it's happened in the past. Butch has really done kind of a good job with this. If there's a guy, they can kind of reevaluate when they've hit that threshold of games played or innings logged,
Mm-hmm.
where they can just say like, okay, we're going to kind of shut him down. We know what we want to focus on, and we're going to kind of hold him to next year, because when you hit the SEC play, your rosters get reduced anyway. And so you kind of see guys that are already kind of taking that redshirt role. I hope, if he's good enough, he will crack into that lineup, because those midweek games are going to be really, really important, for Auburn, especially just RPI wise are going to be big. Just with how the scheduling around the country is going to be, there's almost like an added significance to some of those games. So, I mean, there'll be some high pressure situations, but I'm interested to see. Guys like that are kind of the best thing about a new season is you're looking at guys that you've heard all these things about, you've seen some film on them, and you kind of want to see them, how they look in orange and blue. Like, you want to see how they kind of fit in, how they kind of either mold themselves to the culture that Butch is building, or kind of leave their own kind of mark on it. And so he'll be definitely a guy that I want to kind of keep an eye on.
Let's move to the lineup now, Kevin, and focus on the offensive side. Auburn, it's an interesting mix. I think you got a return of starters, but also potentially 3 or 4 new guys in the lineup this year as well, mostly young bats at the freshman. New catcher back there, which could certainly make a difference on the pitching side with the battery as well. Potentially either Nate LaRue, who we think is the leader in the clubhouse, to probably start, or Ryan Dial. But you do have some experience coming back. Ryan Bliss, off his amazing full-on freshman campaign, expected to start up the middle at shortstop and kind of be that infield anchor for Auburn. Rankin Woldy's coming back to play over at the hot corner. Judd Ward out in left field, and his consistent bat near the top of the lineup should be great. Stephen Williams adding a little power out in right field. And Kason Howell to patrol out in center. So the outfield set, it's really the infield that has question marks for Auburn. How do you see the defense? And then where do you see these guys setting in the lineup for the Tigers this year?
I think you're going to kind of see, it's going to be interesting to see what they do. With COVID last year in the roster situation, you've got Auburn returns a ton of experience. Auburn, in a normal college baseball year, Auburn would not have as many players that played in the College World Series 2 years ago that would still be on the team.
Okay.
And so but you don't necessarily have log jams. You have guys that are kind of finding their role. So right now, I mean, like I said, I agree. I think Nate LaRue and Ryan Dial, they're the two guys that are going to be for catcher and DH. And they're kind of going back and forth. Butch said as much in one of his This Week in Auburn Baseball things. First base is going to be, I think, a battle as well. I mean, you've got Bryson Ware and then John Samuel Schenker, and you just got to kind of see when he gets back into baseball shape. He's been in football shape for the past couple seasons. Second base, I like Brody Moore at second. I think that I've read some things about Cole Foster kind of pushing a little bit and maybe not necessarily taking some reps, but kind of working his way into the roster a little, into the lineup a little bit. Ryan Bliss, I think, is shortstop, and I think Bliss and Brody, you can kind of flip flop them all the time, if need be, depending on the situation. So you're really strong up the middle, and Rankin holding down third, and the outfield. I mean, the outfield is basically all extra seniors. I mean, you've got Kason, Judd, Stephen Williams, and so, but you still have guys like Garrett Farquhar and we mentioned kind of Cole Foster, guys that are right on the cusp, and they're probably going to see a lot of playing time while they're kind of adjusting. I think that's one of the better things that Auburn does is Auburn is not afraid to use that DH role as not necessarily, a lot of times you think of DH, you think like this American League, you got to kind of keep a power bat there, that's your cleanup guy, or he's batting third to kind of always bring runs in. Auburn doesn't necessarily do that a lot. They'll use that DH spot as basically an extra table setter. And so depending on who is in that role, it'll shift your lineup a little bit. I really think that we keep Judd at leadoff. and then Ryan batting second, and then after that, I think you would go with Rankin Woley batting third, and then Stephen Williams batting fourth in that cleanup role, and then you kind of that's 4, and then 5 and 6 you can kind of mess around with, depending on who's pitching that day, and then I like personally, just my philosophy about how I think baseball kind of works best. I like keeping another kind of fast, twitchy bat in the 9 hole. So that's probably where you'd see like Case and Howell. So when that lineup rolls over, you got a better chance statistically of having an extra guy on base, and then Judd has an RBI chance, and then Ryan Bliss has more RBI chances. So I think 1 through 4 you're kind of set. 9 you're kind of set, and I think in that middle, that 5, 6, 7, 8, that's when you're going to kind of see a lot of guys move up or down based on how hot or cold they are. Or if you've got a guy that is being consistent, you're probably going to slot him, depending on how he's doing offensively. You're probably going to slot him in that 7th spot, just kind of to to not have
things moving.
Not have as many gaps in your lineup.
Kevin, one of the other things that we really haven't seen Butch Thompson do as much, he's done it in certain situations, is speed on the base pads, pinch running for players in certain situations. It's happened, but it hadn't really been a calling card of the Tigers in the past couple of seasons. This year, Auburn has a guy in a transfer from Ole Miss that could be the fastest player in college baseball.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I don't know why I had a brain fart. I can't think of his name.
Josh Hall.
Josh Hall. Yeah, and then I think that's one of those kind of pinch run. Normally they've had those pinch runner roles have been guys that's all they've really done has just been pinch runners. And you'll kind of see them a little bit early on, and then you won't see them anymore. But they're really just these situational guys. But I could definitely see him being a weapon. Josh Hall being a weapon instead of a late game. You need this run. It's a very close game, tie game, or you're behind. You kind of need this run, and he's that guy that as soon as somebody gets in, he's going to be running, and he's going to put a lot of pressure on the base. And that's a really good weapon to have. It's a really good kind of strategy to have when you're kind of building a baseball team. So he's another one of those guys. When we talk about those freshmen that are, you really got. I guess he would be technically a transfer. I don't know what his year would be. New face. That you can kind of see. I mean, it's just this is like the Swiss Army knife on offense, where you're kind of hitting. And that's, to me, that's like the best thing about baseball, is that you'll kind of see that style develop. You'll kind of see what Auburn's identity is going to be. Butch's big thing has been attack, and it's attack with pitching, you attack with on the base pass, and so being able to have those guys that are disruptors and really be productive on the base pass and not run themselves into outs. I think that's kind of the better thing, and having a guy you can kind of rely on to come off the bench, and he's going to steal or at least make a relief pitcher honest and kind of hold him on there, which might set you up something on the other side of the field. That's really good to have.
Let's talk schedule for a minute. Auburn ranked in the top 25 coming into the year. That's good for 9th in the conference, just showing how brutal the SEC is going to be. Before we get to the SEC, it seems like, especially last year, the season stopped right before SEC's play was going to start. Auburn was 13-5, one really tough series on the road. I think I was actually at home last year against UCF, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So this year, that out-of-conference big series is actually a tournament, and I think it's by far and away the toughest tournament preseason that Auburn's played in years. I can't remember one quite this good. Luckily for me is it's 15 minutes from my house, so I'm right behind the plate for 3 days, baby. Let's go. But talk to me about the Round Rock Classic for a second. Auburn's going to open with Presbyterian on opening weekend. Then a quick midweek series against Alabama A&M before coming out here to Round Rock, Texas and Central Texas, where they'll play Oklahoma, Baylor, and a non-conference game with Texas A&M over the course of 3 days. And I really think this is your early shot to see what the Tigers may have moving into SEC play.
Oh, I agree. And then, there was a little bit of question if Auburn was even going to be in that in the Round Rock Classic. It was kind of they didn't know with COVID if they were even going to have it, and it's kind of weird how it's shaken up this year. That Texas, the state of Texas, has become kind of this extra epicenter of college baseball because you got the Round Rock Classic, and then the Globe Life Field has their own little classic.
Yeah, there's one in Frisco, which is actually
Houston.
just north of Dallas, and then Houston's got one. There's four different tournaments for college baseball, and actually Oklahoma's playing in two of them. Right. They're playing in Round Rock, and I think they're also playing in the one in Frisco a week later.
It's crazy, and that it's good to have. It's good for Auburn also to get that exposure and to go out there and to have that early season test to play. Play Oklahoma, play Baylor, two really really good teams that are going to be at the top of the Big 12, and then getting an early look at Texas A&M, an early weekend look at Texas A&M at that. I think it's going to really be good. I think the bigger thing with that tournament is not necessarily who they're playing; it's how they are going to kind of get to that tournament. Not necessarily the travel, but they're going to start off the season playing 5 games in 6 days. And then you really only got, 1 travel day, 2 travel days to get out to the Round Rock Classic. But you also this year got to factor in, you've got all your COVID testing, you have all the kind of, you have to really be very careful about that when you're traveling. And so you're kind of on edge a little bit, making sure that all those extraneous things are taken care of, and all those sort of outside things outside of the game are going to allow you to play the game. But once they come back, once they go to that, they kind of had that. They did kind of get the short shaft in the scheduling. They played the early game each day.
Hey, it gives me an excuse to take Friday off, man. That's
true.
Okay with this.
That is true. It just gets more. It's that test, and it helps with recruiting, although recruiting in baseball is just a different animal altogether. But it's really good for Auburn to have that showcase. Auburn doesn't or hasn't in the past necessarily played in these bigger showcase classics. We played in Pensacola in that Blue Wahoos tournament a couple years ago, but Auburn really hasn't. But you're starting to see more and more that if you don't have one of those for the SEC, if you don't have one of those like kind of big premier series early on, that you try to get into one of these big tournaments and you try to get in one of these big kind of classic deals, because for the experience, for the exposure, and really just for the competition more than anything. And so instead of Auburn, you've seen it happen. Well, it was like Missouri maybe 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, where they just steamrolled all through their non-conference, were undefeated going through the non-conference, didn't really play much of anybody. And then hit SEC play, and they just kind of fall apart. And you've seen that kind of with Auburn sometimes, where they just haven't been kind of tested. Having this game and having it be,
because someone's caught my throat there.
Sorry about that.
Auburn, like having that early testing, you've got a lot that you can work on, a lot that you can work with and kind of say, and then you're going to follow that up. You're going to have 2 weekends to really kind of right the ship if anything goes wrong. That you've got against Little Rock and against Xavier, where you're kind of it's a good kind of early test where you can recover if need be, but then also if it goes well and goes great, then you've got all the confidence in the world going through. You've already boosted your RPI. It's not going to hurt you RPI wise, and so it's really just all benefits for playing in that tournament, and there's no negatives that I can think of outside of the travel and outside of it being on Flow Sports. So if you're not as lucky to live in Texas, you're shelling out $20 for 1 month to watch 3 games or a bunch of other. You watch a bunch of other games that are on Flow Sports, which is the worst. It's kind of the worst streaming service that they have.
It's based here in the city I live in. It's bad, man.
Kevin, we've got about 3 minutes. So my final question is going to be, what is the goal? Butch has stepped up every year, getting Auburn back to the regional finals, getting Auburn to the super regionals, getting Auburn to win a super regional and back to Omaha. What's the goal for this year for this edition of the Auburn Tigers?
I think the best thing for Auburn is, honestly, at this point, is just make a regional. I know the expectations are going to be high considering the guys that are on that College World Series team. Kind of how Butch has progressed, but then you also kind of have to look at how weird this season is going to be going in. Yeah. You don't even know how many games you're actually going to be able to play And everybody is loaded across the board. I mean, everybody basically in the SEC, it's stacked. There's not going to be a bad team. I think one of the predictions that I saw for regionals basically had like 11 SEC teams that could get to a regional.
Good.
Yep.
So, just making a regional is going to be a success for this season. Hosting is going to, if Auburn hosts a regional, then that's gangbusters. But at this point, as we're kind of getting the foot in, it's really just Auburn has everything it needs to make a regional.
Yeah.
And that's where Auburn kind of, I think, needs to be as a program now, is we're just consistently make regionals, and then start to, once you're done that, you're breaking through to, now you're going to keep making super regionals. Now you're going to keep making, then you're going to keep making College World Series. Like, that's kind of how the progression works in college baseball. You have to build these foundations, and that's what Butch is doing. And then the next step for this year is just making that regional and keeping that success rolling, because you don't want to kind of stumble. You just want to kind of keep building, keep establishing that foundation, keep kind of building that legacy, and just going from there.
Awesome. Kevin Ives, we appreciate the insight, my friend. Looking forward to the baseball season. Everybody, make sure you go give him a follow. If you want to know anything and everything there is to know about Auburn baseball, follow at AUPPL. That's at AUPPL. Plainsman Parking Lot. He'll keep you informed all season long. Kevin, so much. Again, thanks for coming on. We appreciate the insight, and best of luck to you, my friend, War Eagle.
Thank you, War Eagle.
All right, thanks again to Kevin Ives for joining us from the Plainsman Parking Lot, AUPPL. So I'm thinking Auburn University Parking Lot. But it is.
It does things.
Yeah. Great baseball insight from him and Drew there. Appreciate you guys having that conversation. Get to ask some questions. Looking forward to the hardball season. Should be a fun one. It's just, and you think SEC football is hard? Jeez, it doesn't.
You don't even know.
SEC baseball is just a whole nother level. When you're literally talking about 11 of the 64 teams in the tournament being from one conference.
One thing that we didn't get to mention is
baseball's deep. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but baseball's deep nationally.
Oh my gosh. But in the SEC specifically, ACC is insane.
Yeah.
But in the SEC, the National Collegiate Baseball Writers Association just released their poll, their top 35 teams. 12 SEC teams were either ranked or receiving votes. And Auburn was either the 9th or the 10th rated team in the SEC out of that poll. They were 25th. The only two teams not receiving any votes whatsoever, Missouri and Kentucky, which are the two most northern schools in the SEC.
Thank God we got them both on the schedule this year.
Yeah, really. No, that's if there's good news about Auburn's SEC schedule, it's that there's no Vanderbilt. And that's the good news. And maybe South Carolina, who is, I still think, a year away, but
that midweek South Carolina, or that weekend South Carolina Texas series that just got announced is,
gosh, that's going to be so good. Oh,
I'm so mad that I'm actually doing stuff that weekend. Friday night I might be able to make, but Saturday, Sunday I've got stuff going on. But
I'm so happy I get the Longhorn Network.
I might have to go to Friday night game down there for that one just to check it out.
Sure. No, that'd be good.
Yeah, I mean, just to wrap up the baseball conversation, for those of you who really don't follow college baseball, it's hard to explain, but college baseball is a lot like college basketball in a way, where teams can make deep runs and they can be legitimately good teams. You remember Butler against Duke, the year they almost won the Final Four, right? And that same year, who was Shaka Smart's VCU team made the Final Four. That'll happen in college baseball. Drew and I and a friend of ours, we all went to the World Series just a few years ago for the fun of it.
Yeah.
And Coastal Carolina won the whole shebang.
I actually remember sending a text to my dad while we were there, and he said, "Oh, who are you guys watching tonight? Florida against Coastal Carolina." And he went, "Who the hell is Coastal Carolina?" And I said, "They're going to win the World Series. I can just go on ahead and tell you.
They're good."
Like, no way. They were so good that year.
They were so great. And it's just, and the thing is, you start talking about Cal State Fullerton. You start talking about the Dirtbags out in Long Beach. Then you get into the Pac-12, and you got the Southern teams at Arizona State and UCLA who can play ball. And then you get the Big 12, where the Texas teams can all play, plus Oklahoma can go. It's stupid how deep baseball.
By the way, when we were talking about the Pac-12, we forgot to mention Oregon State, who has just been the John Cena of college baseball. People for no good reason.
Yeah. And by the way, out of nowhere, Michigan and Indiana have gotten good.
Where did that? I understand that, and Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota too.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on?
Like, and you'll randomly find like a Seton Hall. A couple of years ago, I think it was Seton Hall or somebody like that. Xavier's good.
Xavier's good. A team that Auburn will see in a 4-game set in a few weeks.
It's a brutal grind. Like, college baseball is a blast. It's so deep. If you lose a series, a lot of times you might see a team on the schedule. Like, how the hell do we lose that series? But then you do a little digging and go, man, that team's actually.
They're really good.
You don't want to play them in a regional. Yep. And the beauty of college baseball when you get in the regionals is you see maybe more than half of the hosts don't make it through most years. Well,
just look at the last time we had the regionals. Auburn, who didn't have a stellar year, who was the 2 seed and probably should have been the 3.
Yeah.
Going into that regional at Georgia Tech, where Georgia Tech was the 3rd overall national seed. Auburn had zero problem except for needing that home run, 3-run.
The walk-off homer helped a little bit.
Walk-off bomb. But after that, had no issue. And that's when Georgia Tech had their ace going and went 9 complete. He went complete game.
And then went to another national seed and beat the holy hell out of North Carolina.
Had, except for the Saturday game. But Auburn had a little bit of an issue on Saturday. However, in Auburn's 2 wins in Chapel Hill that year.
Well, and the decisive game was over in the first inning. Literally, it was done. It was 14-0. 14-0 in the first inning.
It wasn't even the first inning. It was over with 2 outs in the top of the first. I never had so much fun watching a game. Well, no, because the walk-off bomb where I literally flipped.
Bomb?
With the Williams bomb, I lost my shit.
I thought we were talking about the Creed bomb back in 2010.
Creed's bomb in 2010. Yeah, I lost my.
Yeah, I was next to
that. Or shout out to a buddy of ours when Trent Mummy.
Oh yeah.
Bunt and pulled back and launched it over the 331 in K corner.
Yeah.
That I've seen a lot of cool things in my life.
Still, and we're going to sidebar for just a second. Still the craziest game I've ever seen at any level. And folks, I used to be a minor league baseball broadcaster. I have seen in person
I know which game
800 baseball games at least, like between broadcasting, attending, whatever. 700, 800, 900 ball games, easy. I've seen a major league no hitter in person. Yep. Yes, I've seen 2 triple plays. I've called 2 triple plays. I've called on the radio. Yep. I've seen I've called what was voted one of the top 10 best brawls of the decade in all of baseball. I was in the booth calling the brawl. It was great. It was great. Made ESPN. It was amazing. The craziest damn game I ever saw. 2010 at Plainsman Park. Saturday afternoon. Auburn, Mississippi State. 16-14 was the final score. And Auburn
84 FSU games of Auburn baseball games.
We were down 9-0 after 3 innings or something like that, 9-1. It was something stupid. And all of a sudden, and I'll never forget your brother. Yeah. He was at study hall, and he texted us. He's like, "Yeah, he was being tutored," and he's like, "Should I get over there?" We're like, we're getting our ass kicked." And then he texted us over a few innings later. He goes, "So how's it going?" We go, "You need to get over here now. Get over here now," because it was just switching on a dime.
You need to get here now. Let's see. I'll see if I can't find it real quick because I've got the 2010 schedule up, and there's a box score. Beautiful.
The day your brother grew whiskers.
Yes. You were absolutely right. Going into the bottom of the second, it was 9-0 State. And then Auburn added 3 matched runs in the third.
Yeah.
So going into the fifth, actually going to the bottom of the fifth, it is now 11-4 Mississippi State. And about that time is when my brother Will sent me a text message and said, So should I come over what's going on? Do I need to get out of this? Because I'm dying in this study hall. And I went, dude, it's 11-4. We're getting crushed. All of a sudden, Auburn has a 6-run fifth. And we go, you should come over here now. You should break out. All right, I'm on my way. So it is now 11-10. And going into the 7th, it is now 12-10 or 13-10. I'm sorry, Mississippi State. My brother finally shows up with his tutor friend. Auburn reels off another 6 spot and makes it 16-13. State gets a couple on in the 9th. Because they got two. They had a runner on. It got a run across on a sacrifice to make it 16-14. That's the wild.
This is the damnedest thing I've seen.
For a game that only had 4 errors.
Yeah.
Like State had 3 errors on the day. Auburn had 1.
I think that was the last year of the really pumped up bats. If I'm not mistaken, it was the last year before BB Core bats.
Yeah, and that was the year that Auburn led the nation in home runs.
We hit like 147 bombs that year. Yeah. It was just stupid.
It was stupid. We went full LSU in the last year of the live bat.
Gorilla ball, baby.
Oh man,
it's gonna be a fun one. I can't wait for the baseball season. So make sure we'll keep you updated on what's going on there for sure as we roll along. Real quick, we wanted to touch on the basketball game from this past week. Of course, we're not going to talk about Saturday because we're recording before Saturday. We do have to talk about the Georgia game. Briefly, because I don't want to spend much time talking about this. That was the worst game Auburn's played all year.
And you saw as much being said by Bruce. I've got to go now to basketball. It's not Butch, it's Bruce. You saw as much when Bruce, in his post-game comments, basically saying we were unprepared, and that's on me. We've got to get these guys better prepared. Georgia had a plan. Because that Georgia team doesn't put up 91 points all the time. But I think you saw Auburn sort of resting on its laurels and just thinking they could toss out steal the phrase from football, roll the helmets out there and get the dub. And
because they did it at Georgia just a few weeks ago, right?
Yeah,
you should be doing it again. What I saw was, and I hate using this word, I saw laziness.
That's strong.
But you made the point. Georgia doesn't score 91 points.
No.
You don't want to know why Georgia scored 91 points? We were lazy on defense all night long. We got crushed in the paint. Just absolutely crushed in the paint. And that's an Auburn team that blocks a lot of shots. So we didn't get back on defense. Georgia back cut us to death on backdoor cuts. And we looked lost. And we look disinterested. Bruce is right that that's on him. But I saw a young team, and I'm not making a youth excuse here. I saw a young team that doesn't know how to win consistently and doesn't know what it takes. Yeah. Doesn't know what it takes to win consistently at this level. Yeah. And you could tell me all day, okay, Justin Powell's still not playing and we're not having a better shooter. I don't care. You don't lose to that Georgia team at home by 5. And it's not even the loss. You don't let them score 91 points because that's not a team good enough to go score 91 points.
No.
It's just not. Right. It's just not. So we'll see how they bounce back this Saturday, and we'll talk about that next week. Actually, we'll have 3 games to talk about by the time we're back on the air here and do the next show. I think Bruce... This could be a good and a bad thing. This is either going to be the game that spirals the team down the rest of the way, or this is the one that refocuses attention and motivates through February and into the beginning of March before the season's over here. I've seen Tom Izzo do it a lot, where he'll lose a game or two inexplicably, and then the team just goes on fire for 6 weeks or so towards the end of the season. I'm hoping Bruce can do the same. The youth of this team concerns me because that youth, what made that Final Four team so special was that team was laden with seniors, and they had been through the battles and the wars before. They knew what to see and they knew what to expect. This team still doesn't know.
Yeah,
they don't, and they've really only faced adversity and come over the adversity once or twice this year. but when they've got slapped in the face, they haven't responded too well most of the time, and that's a concerning trend.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and I think that's what, as we record, what we will see, when you're listening to this, what we saw hopefully against Ole Miss coming up on Saturday. I need to see a bounce back because again, you're playing more for pride this season because there is no SEC tournament, there is no NCAA tournament on the horizon for this team. But from what I know about Bruce, he's too good a coach to just let this slide and continue.
Yeah, I'll see how much attention he gets to the players this week. Should be a good game with Ole Miss, and hopefully the Tigers are able to bounce back, and then a few more games after that. We'll talk more about those when we are back in a week or so. So glad you could join us again this week, folks. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at FOT Podcast. Same for Instagram at FOT Podcast as I lose my spot and what I'm thinking about here. You can
Slow train coming.
Yeah, you can search us on YouTube, Friends of the Program. Same for Spotify, iTunes, all that good stuff. And we'll continue to talk Auburn sports like we do every single week. For Drew McCracken, I'm Brad Tillery. Thanks so much for joining us. Talk to you again. See you guys. War Eagle.
War Eagle.